let's talk about something really crazy, or perhaps not so crazy. There's a lot of information out there about Jeep Grand Cherokees in particular, it seems, from 10 to 15 years ago, having a lot of electrical problems. We have a 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee here with a 4.7 V8, and it's doing some really weird stuff that I want to document and talk about a little bit here. It doesn't run very well. In fact, it won't start unless you give it throttle, and then it won't idle. So the second you let the RPMs drop below 1200 or so, the engine will actually die. As long as you keep the RPMs up, it runs, but it doesn't run very well. So we hook up a scan tool to it, and there's no codes or anything stored. Check engine lights acting funny. I'll show you that in just a minute, but I've got a scan tool hooked up to it here. And so we're looking at the serial data. And on this particular screen, we've just got some of the normal scan tool data, but there's some really weird stuff going on. If you look at our auto shutdown relay, it shows it pulsing off and on, fuel pump relay, pulsing off and on, purge control duty cycle. See, there's another thing it just did. Purge control duty cycle switching 100%, 0%, 100%, 0%. Leak detection pump for the evap system, on and off. Leak detection pump solenoid, on and off. The idle air control motor also on and off. That little thing it keeps doing, it keeps losing contact. It keeps losing communication with the PCM. Okay, so acting really weird. Now, if you go out here under the hood and actually look at all these devices, you can see and you can hear that they are all clicking off and on. So if we dig into our fuse relay box here, okay, right here we've got our auto shutdown relay clicking off and on. Over here, fuel pump relay clicking off and on. If you come over here, here's the solenoid for the evap flow, or evap, not purge control, leak detection pump clicking off and on. Here's the purge solenoid right here. Okay, it's clicking off and on. Back over in here we have our idle air control motor, and it is clicking off and on. So all this stuff acting completely crazy. Let's see if we can start this up. It might not start. The battery, because of all the messing around, the battery hasn't been working very well, or it's been run low. Okay, so it started, but I gotta hold the throttle. Okay, watch the RPMs fluctuate. So the engine misfires, but it misfires to a rhythm. Okay, it misfires to a rhythm, and it's a rhythm that really closely matches what the auto shutdown and the fuel pump relay are doing. Now with the engine running, and we go back and we look at those items that were messing up before, it shows they're steady. If you look over there, the check engine light is sort of flashing. It's not flashing like misfire flashing, it's kind of slower than that. If you go in and try to look for codes, there are no codes. There's no codes with the key on, off, with the key on engine off, or the key on engine on. There's no codes. So anyway, some of the stuff that this Jeep is doing. So we're gonna do some investigative work. There it goes, it'll die. We're gonna do some investigative work, and we are going to look into problems related to power supplies and the computer. See, the engine died. Now everything goes back to clicking on and off. So let's do some experimentation. So we've been back in here at the PCM doing some digging around. Considering all of those output devices that are controlled by the computer are all going haywire, we kind of suspect computer, but you cannot just replace a computer until you've checked a few things out. We needed to do input testing, and so we've actually done that. We checked our power supply to the computer and our grounds coming from the computer to make sure that they are all intact and that they are all in good shape. We did that by doing a voltage drop test. So we voltage drop tested all of our powers and grounds going into the computer, and they all look okay. So I think we are going to go ahead and put a computer in this. Now, if you do a little bit of research on these electrical problems these Jeeps are having, half the time the computer fixes it and half the time the computer doesn't fix it. There's a lot of problems with the fuse relay box like this, but that's typically on some of the newer ones. So it's looking very much like the computer. And but you know, anytime you replace a computer, it can be a little bit scary because there is no real good test for the computer other than input testing the stuff that's there. So far everything looks like all those inputs look like they're probably good, so we're definitely leaning towards computer. So we got the computer out of this Jeep. We're going to replace it, but looks pretty normal. But I just want to point out the back here. Look at all that corrosion. Now, granted, this computer is a sealed unit inside, but when you see this kind of corrosion on the outside, and this is pretty substantial corrosion, it's not the worst I've seen, but it's pretty bad. If it looks this bad on the outside, the chances of some corrosion perhaps getting to the inside is probably pretty good. Now, this car has plates from South Carolina, which is obviously a humid place, but there's no telling where it's come from. It's probably spent a lot of its life further north than South Carolina, back on the East Coast. Compared to what we have out here in the Rocky Mountains, corrosion is crazy. I mean, you look at this, for example, this alternator sitting right here, the housing of this alternator, all that corrosion that's built up, all this on the AC compressor, it's just everywhere, and that's normal from cars that are from back east. But anyway, we're gonna replace this computer, and we'll see what happens. And of course, if the new computer fixes our running condition, then you know, chances are some corrosion somehow got into the computer or something happened in there to mess this thing up. Okay, so we checked our powers and grounds going to our computer back in here with a voltmeter, checked voltage drop on all of those lines, decided that it was probably the computer. We have put a computer in it. We've got everything all reinstalled and buttoned up. Of course, we didn't just put the computer in and plug it in and then let's just try it and see if it works, because of course, replacing a computer, once you diagnose it as a computer, you're kind of committed. So we thought, what the heck? Let's go ahead and install it, get it in, put it all in there. We've got a battery charger here running because we've drained the battery down with a lot of cranking and messing around. So anyway, we need to program this computer. I'm going to kind of show you how to do that. We've gone through and we've programmed it already, but I thought I would include this in the video as well. So you can see here we have the DRB3, which is by no means the latest Chrysler scan tool, but back in 2001 when this Jeep was made, this was a pretty nice unit. So for an older vehicle like this, an older scan tool is going to work just fine, at least in this case. You can't always do that with factory scan tools. Sometimes they get a little bit old and outdated and they just don't cut it anymore, but this one works just fine. So we're going to go through the process here of setting this up. So we'll go into our DRB3 standalone mode, which is just our regular scan tool mode, and we'll wait for it to do its thing. This is a 98 through 06. Our DRB3 goes up to 06, so being an 01 Jeep that we're working on, that's going to be just fine. So I'm going to hit enter. It gives you that option. Are you working on something that's more Mitsubishi or more Mercedes than Chrysler? And of course no, so we're just going to stick with selection number 1. We're going to go into engine, and this is where we have all the functions related to our engine controls or our engine computer. So we can wait. Okay, anyway, it says it's all that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, all that information is correct. You can see the engine type there. Everything's fine. Yes, yes, that's all the stuff that it's got. We're going to hit enter. Okay, now in our main menu here, you can see there's lots of different stuff. What we actually want to do is kind of a miscellaneous function. We're going to go to VIN check. So we go over. I push the over arrow, and we went to a second menu called miscellaneous. So under miscellaneous, now we bring up our miscellaneous functions. So we go down to VIN check. Okay, and what it'll do in VIN check is it's going to go to validate the VIN. that is programmed into that PCM. Well, it'll go look at the VIN in the PCM, and it will see that this VIN does not match what's programmed for this vehicle. Do you want to program the VIN? You tell it yes. Now, in order to program the VIN, you have to have the PIN for this vehicle. A lot of, well, not just Chrysler stuff, but all vehicles out there will have some kind of a security code that you'll have to obtain. Now, in order to get this security code, you can either go to one of Chrysler's technical websites if you are a licensed locksmith, and you can get a key code plus the PIN, or you can go to the Chrysler dealer and get it from them. So anyway, we got this PIN from the Chrysler dealer, and or Jeep dealer, but you know, the same. Punch the PIN in. The scan tool says, "Are you sure?" You say, "Okay," and then you, and then what it will do is it will actually program. It'll ask you, "Want to program the VIN?" You say yes. So it goes and it pulls the VIN out of another onboard computer and programs it into the PCM. And after that's done, it will program the immobilizer, and which will basically allow the vehicle to start. If we would have tried to start this vehicle just putting that computer in, what would have happened is it would have started, and then it would have died. When you first turn the key on up here, okay, there's see the key light. That'll come on and stay on. If that comes on and stays on, then that tells you that you're not going to start. Well, what it actually does is it starts, runs for 2 seconds, and dies if you don't program the VIN. So anyway, we've got this one programmed. The VIN is validated. Everything is cool. So I'm going to crank this engine over, and we're going to see if replacing the computer on this 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee and then programming it with our DRB3 has in fact fixed it. So I'm just going to reach over here. And it's alive. Seems to be running nice. It is alive. No check engine lights. Everything looks good. Let's walk back up here and have a look under the hood. I would say it's running just fine. I think we fixed it. So anyway, really strange situation with this one. Like I said before, you're always taking a risk by just replacing a computer. You always have to make sure that you have checked every other possibility first. And that's a little bit difficult to do. On this case, it was a little bit easy to jump right to the conclusion of computer because of the fact that we had crazy outputs that were functioning in unison that normally have nothing to do with each other. Like the purge control solenoid and the fuel pump relay cycling off and on by themselves in synchronization. That's pretty crazy. That says computer. But nevertheless, we did a voltage drop test on all our powers and grounds. Thought, what the heck, let's throw a computer at it. Of course, at that point, we're not really throwing a computer at it, are we? We've actually done some diagnosis. So I put a computer in it, and now it works. Well, apparently this is a fairly common thing on some of these Jeeps. But like I said before, computers don't always fix it. Well, in this case, the computer has definitely fixed it because it's running. It wasn't running before, and now it is, so now we can call it fixed. Now, could there be some other kind of underlying issue? Something else that caused that computer to go bad that is still there, like a root cause, you know, maybe the bad computer was just a symptom. In this case, not very likely. I think what we'll do before we turn this one loose is we'll go ahead and check a few things. I'm going to look at alternator output. I'm going to look at the AC output from the alternator. Make sure we don't have too much AC. Make sure we're not charging at a too high a rate. So some weird stuff like that that can cause computers to go bad, but otherwise I think we'll be good to go.